Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Career Revolution interview series. This is the place to be inspired and find interest and strategy to help you revolutionize your career. These are the conversations that I have with amazing people who have done extraordinary things in their career to revolutionize them. In fact, I would say that they're ordinary people just like you and I who've done something extraordinary. And my deepest desire and hope and wish is that by listening to these conversations, you too are inspired to revolutionize your career. So today is episode Reflect with the formidable Alice Bhebhe, who I can't wait to bring on stage. Before I do, though, please may I ask that everybody follow my company page, Licia Dewing Career Strategist on LinkedIn. By doing so, you'll be able to see the latest series that come through, whether they be strategy sessions that I share or interview series. You'll also be close enough to my team so that we can interact with you and create specific content and provide you with information that helps shift and revolutionize your career. I'm going to bring Alice in now. She's waiting backstage for us. And there she is.
Hi, Licia. How are you doing?
I'm so well, Alice. Welcome. It's wonderful to be here in this context talking to you because we've had quite a history. We've known each other from a decade ago, from before where we are now in our previous careers.
Yes. Wow. I look forward to the conversation and thank you so much for inviting me.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for being available and for having, carving out some time and sharing your career revolution stories. Let's get into the conversation. I would love to ask everybody who's watching, share with us and let us know what city you're tuning in from. I love to see how global our connections go. LinkedIn is such a phenomenal platform. And if you have any particular questions for Alice as we speak, please go ahead and also type those into the comments. She and I will respond to the questions in the comments. So let's get into the story. Alice, perhaps what would be relevant before I start jumping into some juicy questions is just tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your career so far to date. So just a brief introduction.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, as my name is Alice, my middle name is Samkelisiwe. I think at school it was just too long, so we ended up using Alice because it was easier to write as well as to remember. And I was actually born in Germiston, a little town called Germiston in Gauteng. However, I grew up in Zimbabwe. That's where I was schooled. That's where my formative years, I spent most of my formative years there. Yes, I was coming back in and out to see my grand, but lots of my influence in who I am today was really formed by where I was.
Came from that time. Fascinating.
Yeah. So one of the things that I always wonder how I did that is by the time I finished university, I was married with 2 kids. So what I decided to do was, I need to spend time with these little ones and get to really know them. So I decided to teach after university. And I think that's where my love for learning and seeing people develop, because I taught at a primary school. So it was so fascinating to see these young minds as they, progress from one grade to the other or from one to the month. They learn things that they never did. And I thought, wow. And I found so much joy and pleasure in that. And I thought, you know what? If I could spend the rest of my life helping people to unlock their potential, that would make me the happiest person on earth. And as obviously, and as I went along, it became more and more, clear to me that that's what I wanted to do. So in 91, I came back to South Africa, lived to the Eastern Cape. And the first job that I had was with Maskey Miller Longman, one of the best moments in my lives. And my role was really to teach English to teachers on how to teach English as a second language. And I worked in the rural areas of the Eastern Cape. So I was responsible for the whole of Eastern Cape. It was known as Ciskei and Transkei then. And I have never, ever felt so much alive. And that's when I started being very conscious of, when do I feel most alive? When do I really feel that I am living and I am having this meaningful life? And then I developed my love for learning and development. So I decided, you know what? I didn't even go to teacher training. I learned how to teach and learn from university and through practice when I was teaching. So I decided to enroll for a diploma in learning and development. And then that's when my career started. And somehow I ended up being in HR. But really, I never set out to be in HR. I just wanted to be in learning and development. And then over the years, obviously, did many things. Yeah.
And I love what you said. You were noticing at such an early stage, early on in your career, what is it that I enjoy doing? What sets me alive? What that self-awareness and that understanding of your source work that came to you so early. What was it that encouraged you to think that way? Because it's not what we ordinarily are taught to think. You know, it's almost the opposite. It's get a good qualification, work hard, get a good job, the company will look after you. I mean, a lot of the prevailing message was separate to, what do I enjoy doing? What makes me happy? I love that individualistic focus on your power and your strength. But can you think of what the influences were? What was it that shifted your thoughts?
I think it was my parents, the way they brought us up. They never dictated to us what we become. The only thing they always reminded us was the importance of learning and education. And it was always find your passion. If you find what makes you, lights up your fire, then you will really meaningfully contribute to the world, and you will have a meaningful and fulfilling life. So I sought that at an early age, and my dad was a teacher. So I'm told that I started going to school when I was 4, not being taught, but going with my dad, because I insisted I also wanted to go to school. So they bought me a uniform, and I had my little, those brown school
little
bags, suitcases, yes. And my aunt tells me that she would come and say, oh, so you go to school? And I say, yes, of course. I don't know where I learned yes, of course. I always used to be in the company of adults. So I'm sure I picked up those words. And she said, she would ask me, so what grade are you in? And I'll say, oh, I'm in standard 6, obviously, because my dad taught standard 7. So my dad would take me into his classroom and I'll sit at the back. So I guess all that without me being conscious of it.
Yes.
Was
how fortunate and lucky you are to be able to have had that message. Find what, follow your passion, do what you love. So you had that wonderful thought leadership behind you that was setting you forth. And it was because of you enjoying learning, because of you enjoying that you thought, well, let me do a diploma to support what I enjoy, versus the opposite way, which many of us are told, study something first, work hard, and then that often, the choice of what we choose to study, as you would well know, in the corporate world, is sometimes so out of alignment with completely who we are.
Precisely.
So that's beautiful. That's wonderful. So thank you to Dad. Please carry on with your story. So you've now completed your qualification. So you've moved. You've got armed with this qualification, not teaching, but within the learning space. And as you said, you sort of found your way into HR, but that really was, the world is so different now. There's so many different ways of incorporating learning into a corporate function, but it would have had to fit under the banner of HR, I suppose, back then.
I suppose so, but you know what then happened after that? So we were in the Eastern Cape, as I said, and I was doing this work with the teachers. And then my ex-husband got a job in Cape Town, and we had to move, and I didn't have a job. And so I told the company that, we are having to move. And they said, Alice, we don't have a similar role here in Cape Town for you. But because we believe you are such key talent, and we've seen the way you work with the publishers and the editors, and how, because one of the things, as you know, Mascumula was a publishing company. And then they said, we think you'd make a good publisher, but you need to be trained as an editor. So I worked as an editor. I was trained to become an editor, en route to become a publisher. But I found that I didn't find it as exciting as when I was in the classroom, because I was still dealing with the educational material. The only times I'd feel alive is when I went to the classroom, we were testing the material. And when I was, briefing the illustrators, because as an editor, you end up putting those manuscripts together. And I thought, I need to interact with people. As much as I'm still in education, I love to be there and really engaging.
Yes.
And so I thought, you know what, because I'm open, I thought, let me learn. I think it's a skill that I can use elsewhere. So I went in, but as I said, I felt I was dying a little bit. So I decided to look for other opportunities. And what happened, it was after 1994, when, as we know, employment equity was on. And one of the things, obviously, I was brought up in a home where it was all about emancipation, et cetera, making sure that everybody's given equal opportunity. So I was very also interested in that kind of thing. And then I got a role with Norwich Life then. I'm telling my age now. Norwich Life is no longer existent as the liaison officer, and I was responsible for the implementation of employment equity and learning and development.
Wow.
So that also
then at the time when, as you said, employment equity was the new thing, new government, democratic South Africa, hallelujah, and now this employment equity. How fascinating! I didn't know that was part of what you did. How interesting! Tell us more.
And so I learned so much, and I joined the BMF at the time, and I was part of the transformation task team, and I had such Gavin Peters, I remember, who was like my mentor, and he just held my hand, and I had such good leadership at Norwich. They believed in me, and they just wanted me to soar, and the opportunities that opened up. I learned so much. My practice as an L&D practitioner just deepened because of the people around me that just taught me so much, believed in me, because I realized that there were times when I would have issues of confidence. Of not feeling confidence, but I was very, blessed to have people that believed in me. And in the end, I think that kind of rubbed off, and I was open to do anything. And then, of course, it moved. I then went to Old Mutual. I worked for Woolworths. But while I was with Old Mutual, because one of the things I've always wanted, I'd always said when we were living in Zimbabwe, Mom, I want to be part of the South African transformation. I remember my aunt will come from Zambia and I would say, I want to go back with you because I also want to go and fight. And say, no, you need to get an education, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, while I was at Old Mutual, I'd been there for, I think, 10 months, 12 months. It was my 11th month, yes. Somebody came running, a colleague, and said, Alice, there's a job that's got your name written on it. I said, what? It says the EU Parliamentary Support Program is being started. So the EU and South African government had agreed that the EU would partner with South Africa to support the transition from one era to the other. And so I looked at the role and I thought, oh no, I'm not experienced enough for this, because it was I was going to be responsible for the learning and development of the parliamentarians, but also support the transition and the transformation of the HR departments in the all provincial legislatures and parliament. So I thought, no. But anyway, being me, who I am, like I had done before when I had applied for the job for Maskibile and they wanted a license, I didn't have it. And I managed to convince them I'm actually the right person. And they took me through driving school, actually. So I said, okay, if you think I can do this, let me try it anyway.
Yay!
And guess what?
So you threw your hands
the job. Yes. And it was one of also, lessons that formed my career, because you can imagine I was now in a place, no, not in corporate, very different. There's protocol and everything. You have to follow certain things with the EU as well. It's, taxpayers' money. So the diligence and everything, that really helped me a lot to learn project management. That's where I learned project management because we worked in projects. Everything's got a timeline. And working with different cultures, different parties. I learned to navigate.
People, ideologies. Conflict negotiation. It was the best space for this.
Precisely. And just having to be the one who is, the moderator and making sure that everyone gets what they need at the end of the day. That was fascinating. How some of it, I had to learn through trial and error, watching. And what I learned is I started partnering with people that were far much better than me. Luckily, I had the budget to get consultants, and that helped me to be really, I think, do well in the role and really meaningfully contribute. Because I remember what I liked about the EU is what they do. They have external assessors who come and assess the work after
Yes.
you've done. And I was surprised at the report that I had. They actually said the work that I had done would be seen as best practice in other countries if they to do a similar project. So, and that was having people that taught, and I learned, because I had always adopted a mindset of learning. I've always thought I knew less. So I went out to learn, to watch, to read, and also understand that other people also have the answers. It's not about me. So I just became a facilitator. And that really, so those are some of the things that really informed, I think, my career. And somehow, because of those skills that I picked up, I think that's when I was able to move into HR without even having planned it.
Yes.
To be quite honest, I just happened to be at Woolies. We had a huge HR restructure. It was introduction to a new operating model, a people operating model, where they introduced HR business partners, and I was made one of the HR business partners, and that's just how it happened.
And from there, corporate role within HR, you just grew and grew and grew and grew.
Yes.
But taking you back before we get into the corporate side, which is where I then met you in this phenomenal role that you held with Levi Strauss. Back at the EU and in the facilitator role, the sort of parliamentary, that was always going to be a contract. It wasn't a long-term opportunity.
No, it wasn't. I remember.
So you knew that you needed to get the most out of that. Your learning, your growth mindset was, I am here to hit the ground running and absorb as much as I possibly can in the time that they give me. And then it was an opportunity, you had to exit. But so critical to have played a part in what was formative to the nation, to our country, to our success, to so much. Alice, I remember you sharing elements of that part of your career journey when we met, when you were at that time you were my client. I remember you sharing some of that, and I was in awe of this as I say, formidable Alice. I had the opportunity of working with.
I was surprised myself. I just felt blessed and honored, and it was great to be surrounded with great people that, because of them, I became, part of the success story, which was awesome.
Absolutely. The success that became, the Rainbow Nation, South Africa, with all that wonder and good. Have you kept in contact with anybody just out of interest from that time in those days? Because so many people have moved into so many different vast areas and left politics and come back into, I mean, this is not the discussion about where we're at now, the state of the nation, but it's an interesting one to have seen, the hearts and the minds of the people that played such a formative role back then, just out of interest.
Yeah, for some time I did, but obviously, as you say, people leave, going to different areas of life or paths, etc. But I always was in awe, and I was so appreciative for that opportunity, because when I would hear people say, "Oh, look at them sleeping in Parliament," and I'm thinking, I have worked with those parliamentarians. I know the sacrifices they've made. I'm not saying they're perfect, but they really were there not for themselves, but to make sure that South Africa really became a nation where everybody can thrive, and have a meaningful and fulfilling life. And it was just, I was in awe, because I was this young girl and I'm thinking, oh, what do I know? But I'm going to learn as much as I can from these wonderful people. And I did. And it was working with companies, your PwCs, companies just across Simeka, some of the consultants. So it was just a whole diverse pool of people just wanting to support that transition. It was just amazing.
It must have been phenomenal. It must have been absolutely interesting, beyond interesting. So that's a moment in time. I would love to come back and talk more about that, but that's not for today's conversation. Let's move on. So you've now stepped into the business partnership role. You're into corporate and fully ensconced in this HR function and role. Talk me through perhaps what the career revolutions were there, because Woolworths was a large part of your CV and experience that we met when you had moved across to Levi Strauss. And
Yes.
they were a new business in South Africa, not new to the world, but they
Yes.
didn't have history here. So there was a little bit of risk in that too, in terms of being, from the retailer into the retail. Talk us through some of the revolutions that took place there for you.
I think for me, when I discovered Levi Strauss, who they were, it was just their heritage and the reason why they had not been into South Africa. I just thought, what a purposeful and principled organization. And that just resonated with who I am. And I thought, wow, and it's international. I've never had the international experience. I hadn't traveled widely. And I thought, I just want to learn more. And I knew I would have the opportunity to work with so many nationalities across the world. And in fact, that's what attracted it. I didn't see a risk at all. For me, it was, wow, what a company with a soul. And I promise you, it had soul. I was allowed to be, and I used to hear when we go to HR meetings, people say, oh, HR doesn't have a seat at the table. I never experienced all that. If I did not, it was because of myself standing in the way because I'm lacking confidence or I'm not sure, but it was, you are an equal member here of the senior management team. We really know that you'll make a contribution and the stage is yours.
Yes, absolutely.
And what I like, that's when I learned for me, because I think I had not been trained in HR. I never saw HR as separate from the business. I saw myself as part of the business. It was just about the business, but caring about the people that make the business work and the people that we are serving, because, we're saying we want to change the world, we want to serve the world. And that's exactly what we lived. And because I don't like job descriptions, to be quite honest, I was allowed to contribute. I was a trustee. I contributed to social stuff from from that point of view. So I felt I could bring my whole self. I could bring my whole self to the party, and that just, it just made me more alive. And yes, it was not always easy, but it was just the company ethos, the fact that they believed in every single individual. It's retail. It was new. I had worked for Woolies before, but this was international, and there were designers. And because I'd loved design before, I actually did art and design up to A-levels, and I wanted to be a fashion designer. So for some reason, special when I was with the designers and the marketers, I just became so alive. That's another thing that I did while I was doing my degree. And I studied philosophy, and we're talking about when we're doing business ethics. I learned something we did was the truth about advertising and marketing. I got so excited. I went and enrolled for a diploma. So there I was, a mother, full-time university student. In the evening, I'm doing this diploma because I just want to learn, and I'm fascinated. What is marketing? What is public relations? I want to know more. Maybe it's something I can explore.
And isn't that so characteristic of you, Alice? Your journey is characterized by saying yes, even if as you said, yes, I don't even have the certification, but I'm the person for you. Take me on. Saying yes to all the opportunities that come to you. Your absolute deep hunger for continuous learning and to never stop learning. And your I want to use the word reflection, and I am going to use it because this is episode Reflect, because you have that exceptional ability to be able to see yourself in this situation, see yourself in the environment, and reflect while you're in it. Whereas that kind of hindsight reflection is often the after the fact. But so much of my experience in knowing you has been your ability to be in the moment and reflect and see what it is, as opposed to once the moment's gone, then the reflection kicks in. And perhaps that was, again, it's the nature nurture debate. It's part of your learning and everything that you had. Perhaps it was the young, small 4-year-old Alice with the little briefcase sitting in the back of her father's standard 6 classroom, reflecting there and then in the moment. I love those revolutions, the stories that you've told. And the point of, talk to us about where you are now, because you're now in this next interesting, fascinating stage where all of this trajectory that you've shared with us, the corporate at Woolworths, the Levi's, the international, the design, what's absolutely set your life. And I do want to share my story of how we connected and met, and how you played a pivotal role in my journey, unbeknown to you at the time. But also the parliamentary facilitator experience, your desire for learning, all of these pieces that have woven together this magnificent mosaic that you are now. And what is next? Where are you taking this now? Tell us about the most recent revolution.
I think the most recent revolution was actually after I'd decided to take on this journey to start on my own and see what Alice can offer, because as you said, I'm a reflector by nature. I think that's why I studied philosophy, because it's really thinking about thinking. I'm just always in thinking about even what I'm thinking. And I was reaching a time where I could feel that although I'm always been a yes and energy, I want to go, life happens. And I found that there's a point in my life, my confidence levels, they're taken a knockdown. And I really had to bring myself up, and to make sure that I get back, because people would say to me, "Oh, we miss Alice." And I'm thinking, what do you mean you miss Alice? I'm here. And I never really understood what they meant until one day my sister had been living in the UK, came to visit me. She had come before, it was, I think, 6 months before, and then she came after, and she said, "Oh, my sister is back." I'm thinking, what do you mean I'm back, sis? Even at work, they kept saying, "Oh, we miss Alice." So something had happened.
Okay.
And when I came back, I really had to examine my life to say, what do I want? But because I'd also been divorced and I was a single parent, I had to delay, because I'd always wanted to start my own thing. Because as you can see, I love to try new things. I don't like being put in a box. And I thought I want the flexibility, the autonomy to be able to choose what I really spend my time on and who I want to spend my time on. But obviously, I had to be realistic. I've got kids at school. So when my daughter, the last born, graduated in 2020, I thought, wow, I need to go back to this dream. And I thought, I've got my mom who's 95 years old. I also look at her, money. I thought, you know what? I do believe I was born for a purpose, and this is what I'm meant to be doing. So things will open up. I believe there's enough for everybody, because I do believe I am fearfully and wonderfully made for this time. And if Alice doesn't show up like I never did, and people started missing me, I'm doing not myself a disfavor, but the world at large. And I thought, okay, let me just pluck up courage. And the timing was great. And here I am. And when I started, I realized I hadn't thought clearly, because I wanted to be everything. People would ask me, so who's your target market? Oh, anyone who needs to unlock their potential. Then I love the other conversation I had with you. I really had to think deeply. Who, because I thought, Alice,
who will I serve?
Who will I serve? Who will I go, and who needs what Alice has? And how will they find me if I don't even know the medicine I'm giving? So I've had to think deeply about that and say, what's my space that's been created for me in this universe? And how do I show up? And show up well, so I can really make this world a better place. And things have just been happening,
Well, the world needs you. The world needs your voice. And absolutely, yes, come from the perspective of, who do I serve? What is my niche? Where am I going to build my business? Because as you have had that reflection from the start, what is my passion? What do I enjoy doing? What lights me up? You've carried that with you throughout. So absolutely solidify those questions around your work. But I'm so excited, so powerful that you're stepping away from that corporate ladder into your own arena to create it and to start spreading the light and igniting that potential in others. And knowing the story that I know of you now with more clarity around your passion for learning and development in the early days. And I loved how you spoke about, I was in HR, but I hadn't come from HR, because that's so powerful. And yet you had such a strong imprint within an organization, within an industry, that you hadn't that you chose after the fact rather than you being formed by it, and you were that type of person. I mean, I remember, back in the day, then it was all, we used to talk about there were two types of HR people. They were the people and they were the admin people. Well, you, my friend, were everything in between. You weren't an HR type. And I so enjoy that. And just to share the excitement for me in hearing this all about you stepping out into your own arena is because you played an integral part in my decision to do the same. I knew you in my previous corporate career when I was an executive recruiter, and we had connected, and they were, Levi Strauss was expanding exponentially, and I think it was the finance division that were hiring and so forth. But we had the opportunity to meet, and it was a Friday afternoon, and we met at the Cape Town Convention Center, and it was kind of like, are we having a tea, or, I think we're having a glass of wine. It was one of those meetings, and the conversation was so exciting, and I didn't want to move or go anywhere, and I was so conscious of, in the work and the role and the job, my employer needing to be back to the office. There was I had to get back to deliver and so forth. And I think I sort of blew that afternoon off because I knew I was investing in the right relationship at the right time. And I reflected on returning to the office and feeling the pain of not having the autonomy and the freedom to be able to choose where I was able to spend my time. And that was the first trigger that came up for me. As much as I loved my employer, as much as I loved the work that I did, it was according to what they needed. It wasn't me, my own time, and what I desired. So that first pivotal meeting was a breakwater for me. And it wasn't much longer after that I then exited from that particular organization. But Alice, so thank you for that. Thank you for bringing your in the moment reflection, because boy, did we talk. And I think we talked about so many things, and it was where you shared some of your time in Parliament at the EU. And I remember just thinking, my goodness, this woman is formidable and phenomenal.
Thank you for that. And I'm so glad and blessed that I had some influence without even knowing. So, and I think that's important, because one of my things, just to go back also something that you said about igniting passion. I remember 15 years ago when I was doing appreciative inquiry, and I had to write what my mission in life is. And those were the very same words I wrote. I still have the notebook today, that I would love to ignite the passion in others so they can fulfill their potential and make a...
there we go. And Alice, as you move into your own business, as you go forth into the world doing just that, I don't have a doubt in my body that you are not going to ignite multiple passions and multiple people over and over and over and over and over again. We are going to, obviously, everybody's going to follow Alice on LinkedIn, watch this space, wait and see what's to come next. So many exciting things. Is there anything else that you are ready to share with us now in terms of where we can find you, or how we can connect with you? Anything around that, or is it a little bit early? And I totally respect if it is. We've got the platform of LinkedIn in your profile too.
I think on LinkedIn, and as I said, I mean, things are emerging, and I'm loving what's emerging. And for me, we meet where we're at. Those that need to meet me at this point will do, and we take it further. I am, as I said, my mission in life is to help unlock the potential of many, so that we can all meaningfully participate and have meaningful lives that are fulfilling for all. And so coaching is what I'm also going to be focusing on. I'm also focusing on working with, funny enough, with my passion. I'm always leaning towards learning and development, because I think learning has got such a huge to play. Life never stops giving education. So the sooner you become a learner, the better, because that's what it is. We are learners. We've brought in this world to keep learning so we can become more and more who we're meant to be. And so that's the space that I'm in. But I mean, I am so open to so many things. The other day I was being invited to come and review some show on TV. So, but really, to be quite honest, that's where my focus is. It's really about learning and development. And I am also learning and developing. And I'm focusing on the ontology approach to coaching. And why that? Because that is a way of coaching to the way of being. I believe that when you coach to the way of being, which is where your deep beliefs and are all ingrained how you perceive the world and others, if you can help to shift, examine that, it can help you to be a different and more powerful observer on this world and change your life to become a much more, a better way of existing. So I really want to help people to really have those shifts, deep and meaningful change. Because I've learned along the ways we change, people say, let's change strategies, skills. Yes, and then, you change a little bit of behavior, but under pressure, we revert back. But this, because it coaches to your way of being, the core of who you are, to, with respect and elegance, shift and question why you see the world the way you do. That can really help for you to really become a better person.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Watch this space, world. Watch the space with Alice. Thank you so much for your time, Alice. It's been fascinating, as I said. I want to go back to that whole conversation of the EU parliamentary work and really unpick some of the cool things that happened there, but that's for another conversation. Thank you for your time. And to everybody listening and watching, thank you for your comments. Thank you for your engagement. Continue to leave some comments or questions that you might have for Alice. I'll be sharing Alice's LinkedIn profile in the comments. You can find her from this actual event page. So please do connect with her. And Alice, thank you. It's been wonderful. I can't wait for our journey to continue to develop and grow over the next decade, because I think in reflection, when we started, it was roughly a decade ago that we met.
Yep.
So,
yes, indeed. And thank you so much.
Welcome to the next decade.
Thank you. And let's see what we can do in the next decade. Let's let your light shine and know who you are. You're here for a reason. So keep shining. Together we shall rise. Thank you.
Powerful. Thank you, Alice. Thank you so much for your time, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone. Bye.